But this is how it works. One of the things that we miss or undervalue is the role that another sound believer plays in our lives. I remember when we were teaching on the importance of fellowship, we broadened the understanding of church more than just the congregating of the people, but we shared the idea that brethren should be accountable to each other. You know, like making sure that when you walk the streets, Nadika, and I see you, I can be proud of what I see coming from your life. Are you there with me? So godliness is to be, I can't afford them bottle. Oh, Jesus. Let me give you all the next one now. A perfect example of what not to be. And this time, I will call. I won't say I ain't have badge number and all kind of thing. Outside the company, you go to buy your water. It have 2 orange lines on the side of the road outside the business place. Any driver knows what that means, right? What does it mean? You cannot park there. There's no parking space. You're going to buy heavy stuff and no parking space to facilitate the operation of the business. And if we were zoning properly, we would say to them, in order to open your shop there, you need to provide parking for your customers. So we can't park there. So the business place provide parking. Parking around the block. You go in, you get a ticket, and you park, you get a bottle. I come out after I don't go through all of that. Remember, I don't buy my stuff and I had to walk right round the corner to find my vehicle to put it in it. Toting my bottle and I'm going about my business. See a police vehicle park right in front of the place. Boy, and if all you know, all you passed, it's real hard sometimes for me to see injustice and stay quiet. I'm talking about real hard. So, I inside of the shop, man. We're not taking long. I almost finished. I inside of the shop. Policeman there. Don't get no horrors, right? Police. Policeman there, man. And buying his stuff. I walk one end of the store. Place of thing bothering me, man. Can't shake it. Eventually, boy, like the Dexter I have always been. I said, officer, I am not trying to be mischievous, but how come it is legal for you to park outside there when the law says by those lines, nobody should be parking there? How come it's legal for you to do it and I can't do it? The man said to me, if he get a ticket, he go pay it. In the police vehicle, you know. I'm like, you go get your own self a ticket? That is not righteousness. That is not a proper manifestation of the upholding of what is right. So I give you one negative and one positive, right? So we're good to go. Eventually, I left the store because I didn't want, I didn't want to push it no further. Next thing you know, I in handcuffs. And they seen on the news, our next pastor get arrested. Not Dexter Lawrence. So I just walk out. Live to fight another day. So godliness is to be demonstrated in opposition to unholiness. And let me tell you this. It's going to hurt sometimes. Because you're going to be right, but you're going to be judged as being wrong. Come on, man. Let's do this thing. So check this out. Life and godliness is understood, in the text, is understood as being connected to each other. Because godliness, I'm going to make a statement now, I'll explain it. Godliness needs a construct. It's not arbitrary. It's not hanging in thin air. It needs a house to be displayed from. So just think that godliness is lights in a house, okay? And these lights need electricity and wires and bulbs and what have you. So godliness needs a construct from which to manifest itself. And that construct is life or living. So godliness needs to be fleshed out in order for it to be characterized as godliness. So Peter is saying, as you endeavor to live a godly life, God has supplied everything that you need. I want you to look to somebody and tell them everything that you need to be a strong Christian, God has provided it. All the research that I have done on this, every theologian links it. And when you really think about it, life and godliness, like, can I have a life where everything is supplied abstract from godliness? Is that what God is saying? No, that's not what God is saying. God is saying, as I endeavor to live a godly life, everything is already provided. So check this out. It is an established fact that God, by his will and ability, has already provided the means that are necessary for us to be able to produce godliness. James says, James chapter 1, when a man sins, he sins because he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. In other words, you made a conscious decision to do what you're doing. It is not that you are compelled or forced or necessarily bullied into doing it. You made a decision. Just like we can make a decision to be godly. There was a period in my life when I was afraid to make the decision to be godly. You know why I was afraid? Because I was afraid that I wouldn't have what it takes to be consistent. I was in church now, but I walked around with this fear of committing my life fully because I was afraid that I couldn't make it. Have you ever been there? Talk back to me, man. We all have been there at one point in time, struggling, with particular things. Check this out. The pathway to godliness is accessed through the knowledge of God. The knowledge of God. We must remember that knowledge of God refers to knowing fully or thoroughly, and it also refers to a recognition of God. We're almost at the end of our teaching today. So, on one hand, okay. So, this bottle filled with water can represent full, exhaustive knowledge of God, like God. Okay? And I can have experiential knowledge of God. How? Talk back to me. By drinking the water. Jesus said to the woman at the well, we quoted it last week, if you know who we're talking, you would ask him to give you. He has been described as living water. So, knowing God, it's you talk about general knowledge of God, but also situational revelations of God. Like how God shows up when I have a need. How God shows up when I'm confronted with sin. How God shows up in all the different facets of our lives. Being able to recognize him is also a type of knowledge of him. And I want to say this to you, that there are two terms, rhema and logos. Logos is the written word, and rhema is the revealed word. We need both. Talk back to me. We need both. In other words, I need to know God in a cognitive, academic sense, but I also need to know God in an experiential sense. And like, how can you recognize God in an experiential way? Like if you don't have no knowledge of God, no academic knowledge of God, no word in your system. And I'm making a plug here now for educating yourself in the things of God. Because like, if one day, let's say, oh my God, if one day you're sleeping, you have no knowledge of the existence of God, no academic knowledge of the existence of God. You lie down on your bed, the window closed. All of a sudden, the window fly open. Talk back to me, y'all, yeah? The window fly open. And you just hear this voice saying, Angus. And all the knowledge you have is of demons. you will get out and run out of this so fast. Because your knowledge of the supernatural is only devils. You won't be able to recognize God. Let's make it more practical. You walk down, so you have a need, walk down the road, and somebody gives you what you require. If you have no knowledge of God, you might just find yourself worshiping that person. Oh, come on, man. Because you might, I'm not talking about like not demonstrating gratitude. That's different. Worship is different from gratitude. Worship is my whole life, so I'm ready to do whatever you want because you give me this X, Y, Z. If we have no knowledge of God and how God operates, that God can use anybody, we would be beholding to people because we think, and they become our God because we were in need and they showed up. As a matter of fact, a lot of us are loyal to people just because they're kind to us. Some of those people, that act of kindness was the one solitary good thing they ever did for you. But you are so kind-hearted and it be holding on to them because they were kind to you. So, the pathway to accessing knowledge is knowing God. Knowing God refers to knowing fully or thoroughly. And it also refers to a recognition of God. So we go now to close up to Proverbs 3 and verse 5. Proverbs 3 and verse 5, Caden. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him. Are you there with me? It's right there, right? Like trust has to be predicated on the foundation of knowledge. Like, how can I trust you if I don't know you? Are you there with me, Sister B? It's right there. And then, like, you can know me, but still not see me. Like, in the context of a love relationship, I won't ask the question, I'll just make the statement. Sometimes people say that they're in love or in a marriage with somebody and they feel invisible. Birthday passed, nothing. Anniversary passed, nothing. Children, Mother Day, nothing. How can you say that you love me and I'm invisible to you? You won't say, let me go for a walk, let me go and buy ice cream, come let me lie down and hug up. nothing. I'm just invisible. And then you're telling me that you love me? Come on, something is wrong with that. Can you say that something is wrong with that? Yeah, something wrong with that. So verse 6 says, in all your ways, acknowledge him. It's in the word. You're about to fall in love with a man, acknowledge God. You're about to buy a car, acknowledge God. You're about to change jobs, acknowledge God. You're about to leave your house, acknowledge God. Am I making this too simple? Everything that you're doing, acknowledge God in all your ways. And here's what it says. When you acknowledge, recognize, know God, what's going to happen? Your path is going to be straight. It's right there. Woo. The word is awesome. It's right there. You want the remedy for staying away from stuff that you shouldn't be touching? It's right there. You want the way to get to where it's right there. So check this out. The text says to us, it's saying to us that we should move away from relying on anyone or anything other than God. It's the first thing. Secondly, it says that our reliance on God must be true. It must be wholesome. Don't come with no half-hearted thing. You only trust God when times are good, or you only trust in God when times are bad. You know, we real funny. Some of us backslide when times are good. You know, because we become intoxicated by what we have and our affluence at the time. Some of us backslide when times are hard. How could God allow me to go through these things? Earth is not heaven. So we're going to go through stuff right here. Are you there with me? So we must acknowledge or rely on God. And this reliance on God must be true. It must be wholesome. It must be for real. It's either you're trusting in God or you're not. The text says to us that we should reject self-centered opinions. One version of this text says, stop relying on what you think you know. So reject, like double check yourself. Make sure that the wisdom that you're acting in is really divine wisdom. And let me tell you this, you and I can act out divine wisdom. Like you can live like God. I won't go so far like one heresy I heard and said that you will become God. No man could become God. Stupidness. But you can live like God. You understand what I'm saying? You can live like God. He empowers you to do it. Check this out. The text also says that we should seek to acknowledge or recognize God's ways in all that we do. So every decision that confronts you and I on a day-to-day basis, God has a thought. God has a thought. God has an idea on it. And so like, what's the purpose of training? You know, like when I used to play football, I used to play defense. And we used to do situational training. So we would practice things like free kicks, defending against a free kick. We would practice things like corners. What do you do in the situation of a corner? We would practice things, simple things, like the goalkeeper throwing the ball to the line. What do you call the last guy again? Center back. All kind of sports positions flying through my head. Yeah, in line back, well, no. Center back. You have right back, left back, midfield, center midfielder. Yeah. Right. And then depending on the formation that you're running, some positions change name. Right. But we practice all of those things. Why? Why? Because when the rubber meets the road, it's not time to learn. It's time to perform. And the reason why we fail is because when it was time to train, I too good. We don't need to train. One of the most dumbfounding things in sports I can't understand is peaking. I really don't understand this. Like people say throughout the season, he peaked too early. I just don't understand. So you practice, train. And then when the day comes for the event, you flops. Because you peaked too early. You can't peak too early, and all of that is training. All of that is training. Every Jamaican in the building is supposed to understand what I'm talking about now. Soon from now, Jamaica will be, if not right now, the sprint capital of the world. I don't know why the government don't invest a big set of money and call it the Jamaican Sprinting Academy. Put a big, expensive program in place. And you go see all of them go fly from all over the world and they go come right there to eat dasheen. And yam and tanya and Edos. Because them set of McDonald's and all the food that the young people like to eat these days, them things don't make you strong. You understand what I'm saying? You have to prepare before the challenge comes. We practice it in every area of life, and I'm so sorry if you think that I'm going too slow, but I want you to get it. Like when it's time for an exam, you have to be studying your work well in advance of the 2 weeks or a month before the exam. So that when the time for the exam comes, you have the information on the inside of you. You can regurgitate it at a whim. One of my good friends, when he was training me in vocals and teaching me the rudiments of singing and stuff like that, he said, when you're getting ready to do a song, to perform a song, make sure that you know the song inside out. And I asked him why. He said, so that you can come in on the song at any point. You have to practice. You have to prepare. You cannot recognize God in trouble when the time for training, for God recognition, like every day when you wake up, instead of calling it commanding your morning, call it God recognition. Wake up and say, God, here am I. Reveal yourself to me. I want to know you more. Because when the times get hard, you want the God that is inside of you to come out. Can somebody just do this with me? Yeah? Just do this. You want the God that is on the inside of you to come out. Hey, let me tell you something. People just rub you the wrong way, you know. And they don't ask for permission. See, they just come. Life just hits you, and you need to have God on the inside of you. Lastly, when we recognize, so it says, second to last, it says that we should seek to acknowledge or recognize God's way, in our ways. So as we have to live, look for God. Also, when we recognize God's way in our ways, we will be able to produce godliness. You got that? When we recognize God's way in our ways, we will be able to produce righteousness. So like those decisions that you have to make, that define who you are, you're going to see God. You're going to see God. And you know one of the things that makes this whole process, Carol, so serious? A lot of the adjustments that we have to make, they are instantaneous adjustments. A lot. The things that sometimes define who we are, they happen on the spur of the moment. So I have to get God on the inside of me, His Word on the inside of me, so I can recognize His ways when they are demanded of me. Because there are always two roads to choose. Always. When we have God on the inside of us, we get to the place where we are able to produce godliness. So the point that we established today is this: knowing God is the bedrock of spiritual growth. That's the place that you and I need to launch out from and for. I want to know God. That's where we launch out from.